Our first speaker is the lead vocalist for June Falls. An interesting fact about her, she runs a podcast called the OK Browns. The name of her talk tonight is Representation on All Scales, Being a Brown Girl in the DIY Music Community. You guys give it up for Jessica Sanchez.
Hi, everyone. So before we begin, I want to define a few terms. Representation means to symbolize. Marginalize is a person or people group considered insignificant, and civil representation is a made-up phrase that I made up talking about the diversity around you in your everyday lives. Representation refers to the reflection that you see of yourself in the media, essentially. Are the representations you see accurate to your experience? The first time that I felt accurately represented would have been with the Tejano singer Selena. She was a Mexican-American singer in the 1990s, and growing up looking at her, it was the first time that I saw my brown skin and my brown hair and my language abilities being represented on the TV. Selena didn't grow up speaking Spanish, and so it was something that I was able to kind of grasp onto and relate to her in that way. She challenged me to accept parts about myself that I had difficulty accepting, like my language abilities. Now, what if little me never had anything to look up to, didn't have representation? George Gerbner said that a representation in the fictional world indicates social existence, and absence indicates symbolic annihilation, which essentially means that when we don't see ourselves being reflected in the media, we infer that as not mattering and not being important to the culture as a whole. Now, no representation is bad, but inaccurate representation is just as harmful to people. Whenever we stereotype or characterize a people group, it just contributes to the dehumanization of that culture, and that's one of the most dangerous things we can do. Accurate representation looks like diverse characters with complex problems from all walks of life being represented on the television. Now, big screen representation is super important, but I would say that the representation in your community is more important than on the television, right? We can't control what the media shows us, but I can control the narrative that I put out to my community. A few ways that I do that is one being my podcast that I run with my friend. It's called the OK Browns, and the other one is a zine publishing press that I run with my husband. Now, the third way, and why I'm up here today to talk to you, is I front a band called June Falls. We're a punk band from Tulsa, and the music's very aggressive, very loud, very emotive, and we try to tour a couple times a year by going across the country. And one of the shows that probably stuck with me the most would have been our show in Houston that we played a few tours ago. It was the first time that I actually saw representation at a DIY do-it-yourself show. I don't know if you guys frequent many like punk shows in Tulsa, but a lot of the crowd is white males, and Houston was just such a good reminder that being inclusive and having a space like that can happen. I mean, it's something that I strive to do and be a part of. Now, a lot of times, I have to qualify for myself for being in the band, so when we go to shows, people don't really believe that I'm actually in the band because I'm female, or they will go around the circle and like say good job to everyone, but they won't say it to me because they're intimidated or whatever. There's just not a lot of brown girls fronting punk bands, and it can be really, really frustrating. But it just means that the encounters that I have after shows are so much more important, and they're so much more meaningful and impactful. I have had marginalized people groups come up to me and just tell me how good it was to see someone who wasn't a white male on stage fronting the band, or how awesome it was to hear Spanish being spoken in that space, because it just doesn't happen very often. And it's just so important that if you don't see your narrative anywhere in your community, that you take up that space and you make a place for yourself and your narrative. It's just so important that we do that in our own lives. I just hope that I can inspire brown, and marginalized people everywhere to challenge the status quo and to think critically about their role in society. I just, again, think, what if Little Me didn't have the representation of seeing Selena on stage? And I just hope that everyone can take from that.